And yeah, hi guys, how you doing? Good evening. And I hope you're enjoying this awesome weather, because from what I've heard, this is going to be like the last day or two of it. So we're going to have a shitty week the rest of the week, and we're pissing down by the weekend. So that puts paid to some of our plans. But there we go. It's now the 2nd of June, and the world is slowly starting to return to normal. It might not be for everybody, but if you go out in the street, people are pretending like it is, and I'm not sure really how to feel about that. But thankfully, we're keeping it real indoors with a slice of retro gaming chat. We're now on to episode 7, I believe this is, of Retrogaming Room 101, and the series is getting popular now, guys. A lot more people are watching, and I'm pleased to say that my YouTube channel is now starting to get more hits and comments and likes and stuff on the back of doing this series. I mean, I am now uploading a lot of my stuff, the stuff that I've done over the last 2 years on my Facebook page, but this series seems to have struck a chord with people, so let's just say. So I'm going to be trying to continue it anyway. And I will be moving just out of it, just so you know. I won't be doing Friday this week. We'll be moving it to Thursday, and I'll be continuing doing the Friday one on a Thursday, because Friday we have been choking really bad, and 2 of my major streams now have been cut off mid-stream because of the internet choking. So just so you know, in case you're usually waiting for Friday stream, tune in on Thursday at 7 o'clock instead. So today, guys, you can see I've got with me a face you should be well familiar with by now. Good mate of mine, and he runs his own pretty cool Facebook page, YouTube channel, what have you. This is Barry Morse of the Retro Shed. Say hi, Barry.
Hello, evening all. Hope you're all well.
And obviously Barry's got a much more professional setup going on over there than a lot of the guys I've seen, and there's no need to fake a background with him. He's got the real deal behind him, and if you haven't found his pages and his channel yet, be sure you do, because his stuff is really good. And if it hadn't been for this lockdown, mate, we might have been touring the arcades right about now. That was our intention, wasn't it, for this summer?
Yeah, I don't know where we were supposed to be going though this summer, but I know it was somewhere.
Well, there was everywhere. We did, was it Bideford we did first, didn't we? Way back in, was it January?
That seems like such a long time ago, wasn't it?
Oh, mate, it seems like forever ago. That was like, well, it wasn't the first, because the first was when we actually did Arcade Club Leeds, wasn't it? That was like the first, and then we said we'd start the tour up like this summer, and then we did Bideford. And just as we were gearing up, getting ready, we were going to try and do one a month, weren't we? Some of these various
we did
arcades,
didn't we? We did.
Yes, we did Swag immediately after.
The following morning.
And then like the world just turned upside down. I went into hospital, and then the world collapsed just because I wasn't around. So
that was that meal you had in the hotel, wasn't it? That lunch you had.
You think is that what did it? But so otherwise we would have been touring. We would have been doing Arcade Club Blackpool, which was supposed to open in March. We would have been doing Retro Dome up in up in, I can't remember where it is either. Yeah. Sorry, my mind's just gone blank. I've forgotten the world exists outside of these 4 walls, to be honest. But yeah, there's loads of arcades, guys, we're going to go and do. And I've got to be honest, Barry, I mean, I'm not feeling that optimistic for the future of some of these places, because
I'm not. I think, to be honest with you, I mean, some of them are scraping a living as it is. They're just managing to stay open, and with this shutdown from since March, I don't know how some of them are going to survive. It's so sad, but some of them might not be there when all this is over.
Well, a lot of them only started up either like late last summer, hoping to cash in on the Christmas season.
Yeah. I
think they were hoping to start a fresh season for the summer. Of people going out or whatever, and it just hasn't happened. We've had no spring. We're now well into summer, and obviously, these places haven't had some of their best months. I know when it's too hot, people don't tend to go to those places, but Arcade Club was always packed throughout the summer. So, and I feel for some of these places, because some of them had just opened, and if they weren't established, I mean, any business struggles in the first 12 months, so I don't know how well these places are going to survive.
And those machines aren't cheap, are they? I mean, let's face it, how much are you paying per cabinet?
Well, that's right. Their outlay must have been massive for some of those guys who didn't have collections to start with and were starting afresh. So, but I mean, fingers crossed, things will go well. I mean, events will take a long time to go back to normal. And these venues we've been visiting, and some of these smaller meets and things like that, I think we'll get a chance to go back to them, but I don't know how soon it's going to be. And in the long run, I don't know how long they'll last. Hopefully some of them will. But one thing's for sure, Revival's going to carry on in some form or another. So at least there's going to be a place to meet and get together. But best wishes to all my friends out there who own businesses in the gaming hobby, and especially with the traders and that, they're feeling the pinch. Probably most of all, especially the ones who took the plunge to quit full-time jobs to take it up full-time. It's not going to be easy for them, is it? So just say hello to a couple of guys in here. Andy Johnson, I know you always tune in. Thanks for joining us, mate. Mike Lees off my Revival crew. Hello, mate. Dean Hedges just joined us, Barry, in case you haven't seen it yet. And I'm sure there's a few more people lurking in the background. I know we've got a few watchers, so there's a few people lurking there who haven't spoken up yet. By all means, guys, say hello. Stick something in the chat. It will appear in the thread. Doesn't matter whether you've joined us on Twitch, Facebook, or YouTube. It'll all appear in the chat there. And the more you put in, the more we can talk about. So speaking to Barry anyway. I've spoken to him about this a few times. I spoke to him about this idea a long time ago. In fact, we were just talking about Play Bideford. I actually mentioned to you back then that I was going to do this series back in January, and I was just waiting to find a footing to get it off, and it's took a lockdown for me to be able to encourage people to kind of get on board with what I'm doing here and see what's going on. Hi Alan Chang, by the way, nice to see you, dude. Your picture's blank at the moment, mate, so you might want to change that up. But we're now on episode 7, and Barry's had a long, hard think about this one, and I'm just going to uncover this one. Now, I'm going to say in advance that I don't usually allow subjects that cover too broad a topics. I'm trying to keep it more specific with this. But Barry was adamant, and he knows what he wants to talk about. There's a few things he wants to inject into this.
I just want to be a whinging old man, don't I, really?
It sounds like it, mate, but I think we're all at that age now. I think when the grey comes out, so does the angst. So, right, so I'm going to hit the uncover now. And this is what we're going to be talking about. It is current generation tendencies. And, this is going to cover quite a wide range of things.
Topic.
But I want to make it clear that this is not just a poke at modern gaming in general. And there's a very distinct barrier, which I'll highlight shortly. But I'm going to let Barry tell you a bit about why he's chosen this.
I think it's something that's been slowly bugging me more and more since the release of the PlayStation 4. Obviously, having a son he's 15 now. I can refer back to when I was 15 and what I was doing with computers and gaming, and I look at what he's doing now, and I just literally want to facepalm all the time. And yeah, I'm 50 next year, so I am showing my age now, and I'm probably just having a whinge. But I think nowadays, don't get me wrong, I think the technology is absolutely incredible. We've got some of the best games I've ever played in my life, like Ghost Recon Wildlands. I've been playing that to death over the past few years. And that's because it doesn't have a lot of the annoying things that I want to talk about today, which is, well, it's almost like the abuse of technology, isn't it, Craig, in a way? We've got these amazing machines, but the way the market has shifted into shoehorning the model onto us, that's the problem, I think.
Is that what's bothering you more than anything then?
I think so. I think it's the way gamers are being treated by not so much developers. I think the developers want to do the best job they can. I think it's not the developers, it's more like the publishers, isn't it? It's the people with the money. The studios on the whole, there's some very, very good developers out there that still know how to belt out a core. I mean, look at Rebellion. They've done the I don't know if you've ever played any of the Sniper Elite games on PlayStation.
I haven't. No, it's not my type of game, to be honest. But
no.
the fact that it isn't tells me a lot, really, about what you're trying to say here. Is that with the companies that are out there, there's no doubt these companies are talented. I mean, most of them have definitely absorbed, a lot of the smaller companies who, they absorbed a lot of their talent. I'm under no misconception, they probably sacked as much talent as they took on board when they took over these software houses. I've got no question about what they can do, but
absolutely, and that's one of my points. Is this? I'm not naive enough to think that things today are like they were 35 years ago. Back then we had, two people in a bedroom coding a game like the Darling Brothers or someone like that. I know that today we've got rooms full of people, thousands of people, probably more people now put a AAA together than your average movie. So, of course, all these companies have to be paid. All these individuals have to be paid. But what grates me is, not so much me, I don't buy AAA releases anymore. I haven't for years. But you've got, people like my son will want to go out and buy the latest Call of Duty at £50 or whatever. And yeah, good game, 50 quid, fair enough. But it's the pressure. No sooner has he loaded it up and updated it, which probably takes 48 hours in itself, but that's another gripe. As soon as he started playing it, you've got this whole pressure about spending more money. And one of my biggest gripes is anything that says season pass or battle pass.
Yeah. That
just makes me want to put my head through.
Yeah, well,
any game that says battle pass on it, I won't touch it with a barge pole.
Well, we touched when I had Andy Johnson on. Actually, Andy Johnson kind of hit this one pretty early, and it was the whole day one update DLC model of the current business model of gaming. We touched on that, obviously more just focusing on the inconvenience of all that and the fact that it rips you off and things like that. But obviously, I mean, I know from speaking to you that you're obviously a lot more focused on the fact that the developers are then forcing these issues. They're forcing an environment of gaming, a whole atmosphere of gaming in which they convince you that this is the way you should be gaming. This is how gamers should game. And I know exactly where you're coming from there, because as much as we could kind of put up with these problems, in much in the same way, I mean, it's a classic analogy, but much in the same way as we put up with tape loading times, it was inherent to the time. We didn't have to, because disk drives existed. There were faster ways of doing that, but it was just the fact that the culture around it, the British micro. We were in hard times in the 80s, so tapes were the easiest way to duplicate things, the easiest way to load things, and the cheapest way to buy them. And they very much did that with the consumer in mind, because if they'd have said, right, we're going to put it out on 12 discs, it's going to cost you 4 times as much to buy a game, the public would have just given the middle finger and said, piss off, we don't want to know. Yeah. And yeah, I know what you're saying there. The way it is now, it's like they're saying, you've got to have this game, you want to play this style of game, and you've got to play ball with all this if you want to be in with the cool kids.
Yeah. It's now, like, what was it? Do you remember the whole shitstorm around the last Star Wars Battlefront game? Not Battlefront 2, I think it's Battlefront 2, wasn't it?
It was Battlefront 2.
And I believe you bought the game. I think they changed it in the end. I think Disney came and put their foot down and stopped the whole thing. But I think what EA wanted to do was release the game, but without any of your core characters from Star Wars.
That's right, yeah.
So you start the game with, I don't know, a bunch of rebels and a bunch of rebel people.
Nobody's.
But there was no Han Solo, there was no Chewbacca. And I was like, well, why not? And Josh said, oh, you have to buy those. And I went, you are kidding me. And he went,
the main characters of the game, yeah. It didn't make any sense.
Or something like that. And I said, that is absolutely disgusting. And he was quite accepting of that. And I was like, no. If you buy a Star Wars game, you expect to play those characters.
Yeah,
that's what Star Wars is about.
That game in particular, that was something we did touch on, because we brought that up because obviously EA have come under a lot of pressure, haven't they, for the whole loot box things and their structure. Now, we understand the free-to-play model has influenced a lot of the proper console gaming model in that they've borrowed from that and saw that people will happily shell over a couple of quid and not think too much about it.
It was the mobile market that started that, wasn't it? Really?
Yes, it was.
And then in-game purchases.
And then obviously they then took that over to the market, but it's how willing people are to accept that. It's I mean, the DLC thing we went into a lot, so I won't kind of encroach on that too much, but I know exactly what you're saying, and it's this: how far will the public go willing to do this? I mean, now one thing you mentioned to me, you were talking about the PlayStation 5, weren't you?
Yeah.
What's your thoughts on that?
Well, Josh said to me, he said, "Are you excited about the PlayStation 5?" And I went, "No." And he says, "Oh, here we go. Dad's moaning again." He says, "Why not?" And I said, "Because it's going to the PlayStation 4." the current generation of consoles and PCs are incredibly powerful. I mean, let's face it, they're rendering environments that we could only dream of 3 or 4 years ago. Some of them are photorealistic. And I said, if you rush out and buy a £500 PS5 on the day of release, what's it going to give you? And he couldn't answer that question. I says, okay, it'll give you faster frame rate. It'll give you higher resolution. It will give you be able to render more textures on the fly. Right? I said, but what is that going to give you as a gamer? And he couldn't answer the question. I said, because it's not going to give you anything. You're going to shell out £500 for a brand spanking new piece of hardware that's going to be all singing or dancing. But take that away from it. As far as gaming goes, what are you going to get for your money? You're just going to get something that looks slightly prettier. Who knows? Yeah,
well, I mean, it's definitely a case of evolution over revolution. I mean, when we go back to the biggest leaps, I mean, some of the biggest leaps. There was the video game revolution of the 80s. It began the end of the 70s, the start of the 80s. Video games weren't even a thing, and even though obviously the consoles and some of the Pong consoles were there throughout the 70s, it wasn't really a culture. It wasn't really a thing. It was a novelty. It was
more of an interest, wasn't it? Like the people went out on a Saturday with a few quid and went, "Look, I've come back with a grandstand TV game."
Yeah, it wasn't a media in itself to be respected as an art form or as a form of entertainment. It was a kid's toy that was glorified, and it was just something that was completely alien to people because there'd been nothing like it before. But then you got to the 90s, and I remember, I mean, people still use it now, and they do still use it in the marketing, and it annoys me somewhat. And it's this term, the next generation of consoles is coming. Yeah. Now, the next although it's a general term when you listen to it in words, the whole term next gen was coined heavily in the leap between the 4th generation and the 5th generation, because it was when we went from that time of having systems that could barely keep up with an arcade machine, could port things over well, but we couldn't even come close to the technology. And they certainly weren't breaking any new ground. They were doing what games have been doing for the last 15 years. Yeah. When the 5th generation arrived, during the 4th generation, and when the 5th generation arrived, they started talking about next gen because it captured something new. You went from heavily sprite-based 2D raster images, and you started moving into what used to be an exclusive kind of feat of the PCs, which was polygonal games, texture mapping, and you started thinking less and less about the bits, and you started looking then at dedicated graphics and sound hardware.
It's a bit like when I first saw the first PlayStation. Carl James, who you know, was raving about the PlayStation, and I took a bit of hiatus from gaming around about the time just after the Amiga 1200 came out, which I would have been in my early 20s then. I kind of like packed that away, and I started going out more and doing antisocial things in pubs. And Carl was kind of like, "Oh, have you heard about the new Sony console?" And I went, "What? Sony? What do they know about consoles?" He said, "No, they've got this console coming out called PlayStation." I wasn't interested, not in the slightest. And then he brought it round one day after he bought it on release, and he brought it round, and I think my jaw hit the floor because I took one look at it. I thought that changes things.
It blew your mind, didn't it? You had like
I mean, I've only seen visuals I think he showed me Ridge Racer, right?
Yeah,
he showed me Ridge Racer, and I was like, that's it.
And that was pretty new in the arcades at the time.
Yeah, this is a game changer. And I think, we know that was the death of the arcades, wasn't it? And I thought, finally, they can put on the box, finally, after 30 years, play the real game in your own front room. They've been saying that for years, haven't they? They're saying that for 20 years.
Yeah, play the coin
Ridge Racer. Yeah. I've got Ridge Racer. I can play this in my living room. Okay, it hasn't got the cabinet and the steering wheel, but for all intents and purposes, that was the next gen.
Yeah,
that shifted things big time, didn't it?
Well, not forgetting, of course, with the PlayStation. I mean, that was the first time in reality. I mean, Sega's arcade hardware was supposed to be the foundation of the Mega Drive, but it wasn't, because it was just that little bit too expensive to do. Yeah. With the PlayStation, the System 11 arcade hardware, and a little bit later the System 22 arcade hardware, they were based entirely around the plans for the PlayStation, and they were just kind of slightly elaborated on for the sake of the arcades, where they didn't need to save money, whereas obviously the PlayStation did. But essentially, at their heart, a System 11 arcade board and a PlayStation are the same thing. And this was the first time we'd seen that, and it wasn't just that it could do the same; it's what it could do. I
think it was some of the pre-rendered intros, and yes, okay, they're pre-rendered. They weren't drawn on the PlayStation; they were probably drawn on the Silicon Graphics workstation and rendered. But when I saw the intro to, I think it was, what's it called, Wipeout. You put the disc into Wipeout, right? And if you remember, you've got those robots, haven't you? And the whole FMV scene with the hover cars and the robots. I was like, no way. Well,
this is it. There were so many leaps. You'd gone from cartridges to discs that offered infinite more storage. You had expandable storage, which was a pain at first, but in hindsight, a godsend, because obviously you needed to do something because you only had read-only discs. You had sprites to polygons. You had full audio expandability that could be used as a CD player in itself. The demos that were brought out, the marketing was genius anyway. They really did market the shit out of the PlayStation, they struck a chord there. But
it was the first cool console to be played in the living room and in clubs.
Well, that's right, but it didn't seem to matter because even if you had no interest in it, the first time you saw one and you saw what it could do, you knew that was different to your Spectrum you've had sitting at home just 2 or 3 years before. You knew it was different. You knew it was at leaps and bounds above your Amiga. You knew
this is how cool it was, Craig. The PlayStation was so cool. I had a white T-shirt, right, and on it the buttons, tiny grey buttons from the PlayStation.
Yeah.
Right. And I walked into a pub and I thought, I'm so sad. Why the hell am I wearing this T-shirt? And I went up to the bar and the girl serving, she went, "Is that a PlayStation T-shirt?" And I went, "Yeah." She went, "That is so cool." I was like,
It was the first time.
It was a cool console, wasn't it? And
I get what you're saying. Is that the PlayStation was, the whole next gen era, when it moved to the 5th generation, it was blowing people's minds. You would go into new ways of playing games, new genres appeared, and not only that, but immediately on launch, consoles before it had launch titles that would be obviously your critical game, like your Mario or your Sonic or whatever. But when it moved onto the PlayStation, they were like, right, we've got Namco on board and they're going to give you all these arcade games that have just come out. You can play them straight at home. When the PS2 came out, it was like, well, look, you're going to have a DVD player, which a lot of people didn't even own when the PS2 came out.
That's right, no, they didn't, no.
You're going to have analog control and force feedback out of the box. You're going to be able to watch your movies. It's a multimedia station. The games are going to look better than anything on the arcade, and it was the first time that they actually did. They started to overtake the arcade.
You've just reminded me of something as well, actually. When I bought the PlayStation, I was all into these next-gen games, and then I saw... I think it was when I was on holiday in the Far East, I saw the Salamander Deluxe Pack, right, for PlayStation 1, which never actually came on sale in the UK. And I picked it up for, I think it was like a couple of quid or something like that. And I picked it up. I thought, wow, I can play Salamander, right? So we're talking about a game from 1987 on my PlayStation when I got off holiday. And when I booted it up, obviously it was emulated, but it was arcade perfect. It was Salamander.
Yeah.
And I was like, hang on a minute, I'm playing a retro game that I've wanted to play all my life from when I was 15 years old, and I'm playing on this stonkingly new, powerful bit of hardware.
The flow can continue. So, in case you've just joined us, guys, and you didn't catch the first part of it, we've covered about modern gaming tendencies, current generation tendencies, and that's about people, about the way that the scene is steering people in the way they choose to game, and heavily influencing children and adults into the way they want us to think. And Barry, we'll just get onto the subject of the PS5 when things broke down. So, Barry, let's carry on with your thoughts on that then.
Yeah, as I was saying before we broke down, Josh was talking to me about the PS5, whether I'll be buying one. I said, no, I honestly think I'm done with modern gaming. And I know there's somebody I work with, a chap called Ian Little's always taking the mickey out of me, takes the piss out of me relentlessly at work, and reckons I'm still listening to 8 tracks in the car. But
I've seen your collection, mate.
Oh, he's a fanboy. He'll go
Earth, Wind and Fire on 8-track. Not even 8-track. You got 4-track.
And I said, I'm done. I'm done with modern gaming now. And I'll tell you what. Earlier on today, I've modded my PS2, don't you? The past few days because you helped me out.
I helped you do it, so I know you did. Yeah.
I was playing Black. I've been playing Black for the past couple of days of an evening, and do you know what? Okay, it hasn't got the most amazing visuals by today's standards, but it's still absolutely. It looks stunning.
Yeah, it's passable.
Absolutely stunning. Some of the lighting and particle effects in that game do not look like a machine that was out 20 years ago. If you think the PS2 is 20 years old, thereabouts, it blows me away how decent looking that machine.
Well, there's that whole thing about the like the threshold of realism, isn't there? What they call it, the uncanny valley, and about things looking too similar to reality. We don't tend to accept it.
Yeah.
Not only that, but when it comes to technological performance, since the 6th generation, since the PS2 arrived. That was the first time, like I say, that things started to look real. They were able to create full free roaming 3D environments with proper 3D, 3D backdrops, 3D scenery, 3D articles. So it became a full realistic environment.
Go back and have a look at Time Splitters, Craig. Time Splitters,
yeah, that's a great example.
Ever, right? I think it was a launch title on the PS2.
Yeah.
You go and play that game and you see how silky smooth it runs. It is so fast. Not only does it look gorgeous, it's incredibly fast, very fast.
Well, there's a couple they don't look as good, but if you refer to like look at the Grand Theft Auto games, the Grand Theft Auto games, even though they weren't the most hyper realistic in every single thing that you did or every single thing that you looked at, it had full cutscenes that weren't pre-rendered; they were rendered in game. You could use cinematic angles. They had day to night transitions. You had fog and mist and rain effects and things like that. It did a lot of things in one, and that was the first thing where you felt like you were directly relating to the character for that reason.
Yeah. And the first game that did that to me was Half-Life.
Half-Life. That was one of the first ones shown to me.
The intro is you. You're interacting, aren't you, in that environment? It's not pre-rendered. It's actually you traveling through Black Mesa and seeing everything that's going on around you and thinking, wow, I want to get out of this train. I want to go down there and have a play around there. It's an amazing... And, when the PS2 dawned, it had some amazing looking games that were totally... The word you want, really, I suppose, is immersive. You didn't care. You look at today's games, they look absolutely stunning. But I don't know, there's definitely something missing there. And I was playing Black, like I say, and it is an amazing game. I'm amazed there hasn't been actually a remake of Black on today's hardware. Because if they kept that, didn't introduce loot boxes, DLC, all the cancerous stuff that's killing today's industry. If you just reskinned Black and put it on the PS4, my God, I reckon it would look absolutely stunning.
I'm sure it would, but then again, would you be able to engage with it as well as you did? I mean, I really enjoy playing Resident Evil 4 on the PS4. I like playing on the PS4 because the clarity actually helps with the slightly. You used to get quite slightly fuzzy backgrounds and not great displays when you originally played it on the GameCube, especially on the PS2, which wasn't as powerful as the GameCube. You used to have problems with draw distances and things like that. And I do enjoy playing it on there, but I understand what you're saying. There's a lot of games that were designed around the fact that you had CRT displays still. They weren't really, they didn't even cotton onto widescreen until kind of midway through that generation. So even though you had options to allow widescreen on things like the PS2.
Yes, those were the days, weren't they?
They were the days, yeah. It really was crossing that boundary. But like you say, the PS2 was the point where I thought, we've come as far as we need to now. It's great to see things getting better, but this is fine. If it stayed this way, we're fine. And if you look at, I'm going to give the example here now. If you look at your typical phone, right, most phone games, yes, the screens are much, much higher resolution, but in terms of the kind of games you find on a phone and the performance of your phone and the way things move and the frame rates and things like that, I would say your average phone is probably somewhere between a PS2 and a PS3 in terms of typical performance or typical gameplay experience, I would say. and that's enough. You know, it's fine the way it is. You don't need it to be any more realistic than that, and it's great if you can. But do I really want? The question you got to start asking yourself is, do I really want to pay £500 to find out, or you know? I mean, I've heard talk of the PS5. I've heard numbers bandied around to the £700 mark, and that if they get to that, you're walking into PC territory, and we already know that the whole PC elitist thing is.
But you know what? People will pay that if
people will.
Says I want a PS5 for Christmas. How many parents would rush out and spend £700 on a console?
Well, that's what I mean. A lot of people will, but it's starting to get to the point now. There's just as many people who won't.
Yeah.
And I mean, I said a few years ago, I know exactly where you're coming from, because I said a few years ago, I predicted we're due for a crash, and a lot of the industry experts have said the same thing, because we're getting to the point now where the technological leap, they're not technological leaps anymore. They're just increments. It's just like upgrading your graphics card in your PC.
And this is my point as to why I don't want to go out and buy a PS5, because I couldn't justify what's the next big thing in gaming. Well, it's going to be totally immersive VR, isn't it?
Well, is it? I mean, we're raising a whole lot of questions with that one there. But yeah, I mean, this tendency, I know where you're coming from. It's that these companies are kind of, they've got no other angle. They haven't got the games to show people.
No.
That to demonstrate why you need this system. What they're doing is they're looking at you and saying, you want this. They're throwing it in your face and saying, you want this. You don't know why you want it, but you want it. And if you don't have it...
do you know what you need? Do you know what you need? A killer app.
Yes,
I mean, look at so here's the thing. I bought a PS2. I was perfectly happy with my PS2. I was playing some amazing games on the PS2. And a friend of mine, I don't know if he's watching, Stu Miles. You met Stu many times.
I know Stu, yeah.
Stu rang me up. He says, I'm going to go and buy the new Xbox. I said, you can keep it. And he said, why? I said, well, it's Microsoft, and I work with Microsoft all day, every day.
And I don't
want to come home and touch anything made by Microsoft. But he went out and bought it. And he said, I'm coming round your house. I think it was a Saturday afternoon, and I was living on my own then. He said, I'm coming round. I've got something to show you. I said, if it's that bloody Xbox, I'm not interested. He said, no. He said, shut up. I'm coming round. I've got to show you something. So he came round, and he unboxed this bloody big, ugly thing that looked like a V2000, didn't it, from the 80s? That was so ugly. He said, shut up. Watch this. And he put Halo on. And do you know what? It shut me up. I was just like, oh, my God. I can see the grass moving. I can see the textures on the rock. And my point is, that game made me go out and buy an Xbox literally the following day.
Do you think then?
It's so good. That's what all consoles need, a killer app.
Well, do you think that they're being marketed in such a way that they just want... It's almost like they're only creating new ones. I mean, yes, obviously to make money. We know these companies are in business, that they've got to make the money.
Yeah.
But is your problem with it? They're just trying to sell it now on the strength of you need this as a style icon rather than as a serious games machine.
I don't think the kids care about that, to be honest with you. I mean, if you look at
think?
when I was younger, if I had, for example, my console and I was happy with that console, and next year there's a new console coming out, unless that console offered something absolutely revolutionary, I wasn't interested in going out and getting it for Christmas or getting the mum and dad to buy it. But I think today things have changed, because what's going to happen is the PS5 is going to launch, and a game, whatever that might be, it might be a new enhanced Fortnite, whatever, all the YouTubers are going to start streaming whatever the new killer app is, and the kids are just going to want to get on that bandwagon. Because the point that we've not touched on and we were going to go on to was the other thing that pisses me off is kids sitting there watching YouTubers screaming down the headsets, watching games like Fortnite.
Well,
instead of playing it, they're all watching it.
Do you not think that's what I was saying about it being a fashion icon? I mean, do you not think that is now a big part of it? The whole streaming, the streaming culture. I mean, if someone told me if my mate invited me around to his house back in the day and said, do you want to come around my house and watch me play my game? I'd have punched him in the face and said, give me a fucking controller. I want to play. I don't want to watch you, dickhead. You know what I mean? So, I mean, do you think that's just the case now that, you know, they've milked Fortnite for all it's worth for 3 years, you know, non-stop and more probably. And now they're just looking for the next thing, and because they can't actually find this new hip thing that's going to become a fad, they're thinking, right, now's the time to chuck something out there, and people will find something, even if it's just fucking Hyper Donkey Simulator for PS5 or something.
They need another Fortnite, don't they? I mean, look how much money Fortnite has made Epic Games, right?
And yet Fortnite could have been done. Let's look at the facts. Fortnite could have been done on a PS2.
Oh.
In terms of what it is, it's not the highest quality graphics in the world.
No.
It's not the most complex game in the world. It's basically fucking Lego crossed with Call of Duty, with stupid physics, stupid fucking hat collections and crap like that. Fortnite's definitely one that's going to be up for contention soon. But
I'll admit something now. The other night I was
Don't even tell me you played it.
No. You've seen me play it on one of our episodes.
I did actually, yeah.
That was the first and last time I've played it. The other night Josh said, will you play? Yeah, what do you want to play? He says, I want to play what's the new Battle Royale in Call of Duty called Somebody tell Craig what it is. I can't see the chat screen, but he said, can you...
I don't even know, but I know what you mean. Yeah. The thing is, that mode was always there. They just didn't give a shit until Fortnite talked about it.
So I played it with him, and do you know what? It was fun. And the reason it was fun was because there was a squad of 3 of us. We were sniping from, buildings and stuff. It was good fun. There was none of this stupid building element. And the thing that really, really pisses me off about Fortnite is, you think about it, it's a good idea. There's 100 people in an arena with weapons, go, right? Last man standing. It's the building. It's the building aspect that really, really does my head in. It's like the leap, jump, build. I'm like, what? But with Call of Duty, it was just a bunch of people on a battleground, and I thought that is much better. I think with what it is with me, it's the culture behind Fortnite that does my head in. All the toxic kids.
Well, at the risk of falling into the trap of just sounding like grumpy old men, I think what we'll do now is we've probably missed a bit of the chat, because I'm sorry guys, a lot of it got cut off. Obviously, when we lost the stream, I think we lost quite a lot of chat based on what I'm seeing here. But I'm going to go back down the chat stream now and just there's a lot of ways. I usually come into these chats and play devil's advocate to what people are saying.
Yeah.
But so far, there's not a lot here I can disagree with, and I certainly can't find any plus points for a lot of what you're saying.
Was it Minecraft? Was you going to ask me about Minecraft?
Oh no, we'll come on to that in a minute. But as far as current gen tendencies go, everything you said so far is pretty much true. I think the only thing I can say in its defence is, do you not think though that even though it's not something we're going to buy, if people weren't innovating and business wasn't driven to take these things forward and evolve gaming, do you think it would have stagnated?
It's a good point. I mean, the industry could have stopped at the Mega Drive and the SNES, couldn't it?
Yeah.
The industry could have stopped at cartridges, but it didn't. It went on to optical discs, didn't it? That offer us a lot more storage. Well, a lot of that storage was wasted on FMV, but I don't know. But it's like the internet. One of my gripe points is you'll pay 50 quid for a game and you're totally 100% reliant on your internet connection and a bunch of remote servers. And if that's not working, Halo's a point in hand. Halo's a great game. Not Halo. What's the launch title on PS4?
I don't know what
Destiny, right? Destiny's a good game, but you're totally reliant on remote servers in a data center somewhere. If that goes down, if they decide to upgrade their servers or whatever, you cannot play that game.
No.
A game that you've paid for and really should have the rights to play.
And it's not fair. There's even though they're more than capable of game preservation these days, they're completely throwing it out the window because they don't want you to preserve what you bought. They want you to experience it, chuck it away, and then in a few, when they feel like re-releasing in a couple of years, charge you fully up the ass for it yet again. And I think they're trying to avoid things like emulation becoming a possibility for the later generations, and it's unfair really, because you're denying people a lot of heritage, and I think that will ultimately bury a lot of franchises, because
you don't buy a game anymore, do you? This was another point I was making to Josh. Back in our generation, we go out, we buy a game, we take that game home, we play the game.
That's our game.
That game is ours for life. I can pick any game in this room and re-experience what I did back in the day.
Yeah.
Josh said to me, this was really poignant of him. We were on holiday and he said, Dad, I really miss old Fortnite. And I went, why? He said, I miss the old maps. I miss the old weapons. And for the first time in his life, I think the lad felt nostalgia.
He got it.
I said, that is nostalgia, Josh. That's why I have this shed. That's why I collect all these games. Nostalgia. And I said, didn't you know what the difference is between your generation and mine? I can go back and experience any game
exactly as it was,
anytime I like. I says, that game was force-fed you down a pipe. You can never, unless they re-release that map, obviously, you can't go back and think, that was a brilliant map. I loved visiting those places, and I'd like to play that again. I says, you're force-fed it, you're spoon-fed that game, and you can only play what they want you to play.
And, of course, they're telling you, and they're telling you when that experience ends.
Yeah.
Because they're saying, well, we don't want that in there no more. The servers aren't popular. It's going offline. And you're saying, well, I still want to play it. And they're like, we don't care. You've now got to play this new thing that we're putting in your face.
Exactly, and how much money have the kids invested in that? Gone, isn't it?
It
Whenever
is.
they feel like it, really.
I mean, that's probably a good point you make there, is that looking behind you there and all the stuff I know what's in the rest of the shed that you're looking at there. And all that stuff you've accrued over a length of time, and all that stuff you've bought. But like I say, you can plug any one of those things in now, and you can play those. You've bought them, you own them. You can do whatever you want to them. You can relive it exactly as you want it, and you can make the experience new if you want to. Whatever Josh has experienced, the minute his hard drive dies on his PS4, or the servers go offline, or people stop playing, or the companies go bust, even if you bought it on a disc, that disc's probably useless, because without patches and without firmware support, these new they're like constantly on they're constantly on a drip, because if they don't maintain what's coming down the line, it's just going to die, and eventually they will. And if you've gone back recently and try and plug in a PS3 or an Xbox 360, most of the top games that those consoles become famous for, which would heavily be first-person shooters, there's a handful of people left playing them.
Yeah.
And the ones that tend to be in less developed countries, so the ping is massive, and so it's a laggy, shitty experience, because those games were focused entirely on the multiplayer aspect.
Yeah. It makes me feel sorry for his generation, actually, because, like I say, at 15 he's already feeling the nostalgia of what he was playing when he was, I don't know, 11 or 12, I think he started playing Fortnite whenever it came out, and he's already feeling that pang of, I'd love to go and experience that again. You can't.
It's tough.
Gone.
Save the moment, kid.
That's why I'd like to go, I don't know, I'll just grab GoldenEye on the N64, or like earlier I was playing Black on the PS2. I can pick up any one of those and think, that was brilliant, I'd love to play that again, and I can. And that's the big difference, I think, between our generation of gamers and kids today. They're really going to miss some of the stuff they're playing now. When they're in their 20s or 30s, they'll be saying to their kids, I used to play this game and it used to look like this, and I can't really show you. I can show you a picture of it on the internet, but I can't get you to sit and play it. Whereas we can say, go and play, have a look at that. It's called GoldenEye. It runs on an old machine called the N64.
Right, we're getting a few frame drops again, so I'm going to quickly address what's going on the chat. Hopefully you guys can still hear me out there. I know the chat is still rolling, but our frame rate has dropped to virtually nothing, so I think we're going to have to try and wrap it up as best we can. According to the chat, people have talked here. Tony Doyle was talking about, he says he remembers paying £240 for an Atari 2600. I didn't really realise it was ever that expensive.
No, I didn't.
It may well have been, very early on, when it was first released out of the specialist catalogue, maybe. And obviously that would be quite expensive now. But yeah, the difference is, Tony, obviously that was a console you bought, and once you bought it, you owned it, So, it's not so bad an experience in that respect. So I can understand that. Andy Johnson says he won't be buying a PS5 on day one. Day one's always an interesting thing now. People used to queue to buy things immediately, didn't they, whenever something brand new was out. People still do that, but it seems almost pointless now, because you can't be the first one to play it, because people get it early online. Some people who pre-ordered the games, it gets delivered earlier than others. You can never guarantee you're the first anymore. And I suppose that has helped to kill the stores, because the stores haven't got anything novel they can do, like the physical brick and mortar stores haven't got anything novel they can do anymore. And of course, with your day one updates and things like that, and the time it takes to install, you've got absolutely no prayer. So yeah, I can understand, why buying day one things isn't as important anymore. Everyone will have it, and let's face it, all the YouTubers and reviewers, those pricks will have it first anyway, because the companies are obviously giving them backhanders and greasing their palms, so they will certainly have it before everyone. So there's not a lot you can do about that.
And they're going to be very biased reviews anyway, aren't they, really?
Of course they are, yeah. But, well, at the end of the day, it's the old trick that the magazines used to play. They would, you're basically exchanging a favour for a favour, and they will say, you can get this as long as you give us a glittering review and tell everyone what you're doing there is fantastic.
Didn't Rise of the Robots get something like 9 out of 10 in an Amiga magazine back in the day?
Yeah, Rise of the Robots is actually Rise of the Robots is a really good example, because yeah, it was a terrible game. It let down a lot of people, and I can understand why. I'll just turn the picture up there, see if that helps a little bit.
Ray traced robots, wasn't it? So it looked beautiful, provided it was a screenshot.
Yeah, that's right. It looked great in the screenshots, but as a game, it absolutely sucked. Andy Johnson says maybe us old gits should start taking the kids' moolah. You know what? I think we'd all like to try. Well, let's face it, they only listen to their peers and screaming idiots on YouTube. So, what would be the point? Do you know what I mean?
What's up, guys?
Yeah, exactly. I couldn't be one of these who created, overblown clickbait screenshots of me pulling stupid faces, going things like that. It'd just be pointless, So. Right. I think the stream is about to melt down completely here, guys. So I think we're going to wrap it up there. Right. I'm not going to do my segment. I'm going to save it for another night. There's not a lot I can do about this. But yeah, I mean, the current gen tendencies, it's very hard for anybody to argue that we don't have a problem in the way that modern gaming is. Some would say it's just us old people being old, but then again, it's that argumentum ad novitatum. It's like, just because something's new doesn't mean it's better, and unfortunately,
that's right.
Hipsters like to pretend they're forever young, and they would be like, "Oh, you ain't down with the kids." It's like, you're not either. You're just pretending to be.
Yeah.
Kids are already starting to get that hit of nostalgia, because
it's not just games, is it, Craig? I mean, look at movie reboots.
Yeah.
Look at the reboot of let's take one. Let's take two. RoboCop, right? Look at the reboot of RoboCop. What an absolute steaming pile of shit that film is, right?
Yeah,
it hasn't got Clarence Boddicker in it. It hasn't got the best villain of all time.
No.
It's just crap. Let's take another one. Ghostbusters 2016. Now, I'm going to wait for all the feminists to go, it's because it's got women in it. No, it's got nothing to do with it.
It's because it's a shite film.
I like women, strangely enough, but I think the film's an absolute steaming pile of crap.
There's loads. Total Recall.
Rubbish.
Everything they've remade, it's been pretty much shite. Apart from a few horror films, And let's face it, they're doing it because they're acknowledging that the old things were better. That's why they're trying to go back to it now.
And they're out of ideas, aren't they? Hollywood is out of ideas.
Hollywood's totally out of ideas. And I think that the gaming industry is reaching the same point, and I think that's where some of these problems come from, because we're getting to that point now where they've done a lot of genres. They're not really inventing new genres, so to speak.
No, they're not. If it's not FIFA or a first-person shooter, what have you got?
I mean, I know that some genres don't translate very well to new systems, and I know that. I mean, what's cool will always change. It will move with each generation. But the thing is that they're losing touch with the consumer more and more, and the current gen tendencies, I think, more than ever, are driven less by society and the identity that the young generations carve out for themselves, and more by the big business that's instructing people what to buy, when to buy it, what to like, and how to enjoy it. And
there's a glimmer of hope, Craig. There's a glimmer of hope.
What's that?
Josh has actually stopped listening to angry rap music, right? And he started listening to 80s music, and has actually sat down and realised, he said, 80s music's really cool, isn't it? I went, absolutely.
Oh, there's definitely a lot more to it.
Yeah. He stopped listening to this, this monotonous rap music like drill and stuff like that. I sound like my dad now, don't I? But he's actually listening to Queen and, all the stuff from the 80s. And he actually said to me again yesterday, do you know what? I think I was born too late. I wish I could have experienced the 80s. And I went,
A big part of it is because the younger generations now get so much thrown at them so early on. They're almost spoilt by how good they've got it. And so when it comes to appreciating what they've got and looking at what they've got, they will instantly assign us, hating on Fortnite to, you're just not with it. But when they actually stop and take a look at it, as your young son now he's reaching manhood, he's getting to the point where he's thinking, well, I really have been shortchanged because I'm fed up with my games already, and my dad's still fucking rocking on his, like 30, 40 years later, you know what I mean?
Do you know what awoken his desire for the 80s? Stranger Things. He watched Stranger Things, and I think in season 2...
It's a good marrying of the two, isn't it?
Yeah. They go into a video arcade, don't they, at the beginning of season 2? And he looked at... This was before he went to Arcade Club. And he looked at me, he says, were the video arcades really like that? And I went, mate, you have no idea. That's spot on. He says, God, I wish I could experience that. I says, you can. When we get to Bury, in a few months' time, you will experience... And he did. He walked in there, and he's like, whoa.
They are
this
awesome
is the closest
places.
You'll get to an 80s video arcade.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think I was talking about this with Neil Wright the other day, actually. I was saying, because he brought up modern arcades, and I was saying, modern arcades, that they're not quite the same, and even that, like, the ones that are trying to recreate it, they're not quite the same, because a lot of the arcades in this country were very dingy affairs, I suppose.
That's why I prefer Bury to Leeds.
Because it's a bit grittier.
Because it's dark and it's got that whole 80s feel to it.
Yeah, it's in a building that's not really suited for it. It looks more like an arcade than a bowling alley, whereas Leeds looks like a bowling alley.
Yeah, Leeds is a bit like walking into Dave and Buster's in Solihull, if you ever...
It's full of neon lights and chrome and things like that. Now, I prefer brick walls, bad lighting... I much prefer that because that was what I grew up on. Every arcade I ever visited back in the day was filthy with fag burns all over everything.
The only thing missing from Bury is the gang in the corner with their tracksuits on, waiting to tax your trainers. And
tax your boy. That's a little bit. Yeah, I know the immense people. There's a million anecdotes I can give about that one because several people I know fell prey to that one. It was terrible. Current gen tendencies. I mean, I don't think there's anywhere else, guys, I can put it, because I honestly think it will be the death of console gaming as we know it. Because unless something changes, I can't see a real way back. And I think that this console generation may very well be the last. If we don't start to change.
Well, it's the last I'm buying. I'm not buying any more after this. So.
And that's it. As much as they can market it to kids, there's only so far parents can go. We can pretend we're all equal these days, but it's getting to the point where it doesn't matter how much you break the bank, no one can just find 700 quid. You know what I mean? That's a lot of money, and we're talking 700 quid. The new one's going to need new peripherals and things like that. Yeah. And it's not even being marketed clever. It's just like PS5's coming, buy it. They haven't announced any big name games. The tech demos haven't been proven to actually be running on the hardware. The last couple of generations when they were doing, I mean, most of the big companies have backed out of fucking E3 because they felt there was too much pressure to show the hardware progression and show real things. And how many instances were there where the games that were being shown turned out to be running on a high-end PC and were never actually the final product? The
other point is the developers only really get to grips with the hardware in the last years of its life, really. As soon as they're given new hardware, they've got to get to grips with it.
Yeah, and it's going to take a long time for them to master what's coming, So, I do think that when it comes to the console generation, I think it's going to be bad. New generation tendencies. The kids, I'm going to sound like an old man now. The kids just don't know how good they've got it, and don't know how good they've had it, and they're going to feel a loss for it. I think
what they say: youth is wasted on the youth.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, it's
the young.
I can't even. I can't see any way back right now. There's a place for like retro gaming. There's a place for indie gaming, but I don't think it's enough to carry the industry forward. And I think they're just getting a little bit desperate.
It's interesting times, isn't it? You got to admit, it is interesting times.
It is, and I think it's going to be. It's going to come to a crunch time pretty soon if we don't do something and just start saying, as consumers, just start saying no. We've known for a long time we're being ripped off.
Yeah,
we've known.
I'd rather support people like Hewson and Jeff Minter. I buy a lot of indie stuff.
Yeah,
and support projects like Spectrum Next, for example. I would rather put my money into supporting a project like that, providing it gets delivered. And of course, the Spectrum Next is out of this world. But
Superb.
I'm happy to support niche projects like that than go out and give game 60 quid for a copy of FIFA, which is the same game as they released last year with just different players on it. So
yeah, this yearly refresh thing is just no good for anybody. Right, I'm gonna wrap it up there, guys, purely because it's we're not even doing anything now and it's starting to choke. So I'm sorry if it's been a bit fragmented for you guys. I'm sorry if you haven't been able to get the full experience tonight. This was one I'd planned to do as a very, very long stream, to be honest, but I just don't know what's going on with the internet. It's going to pieces. So I'm going to take this apart. I'm going to splice it all together. I'm going to try and salvage something from it. I might need your help on this, Barry, actually, because I'm now good when it comes to video editing. I need to put my episodes back together and get them re-uploaded so people can watch them in a watchable state. Do you know what I mean? So
yeah, absolutely.
I might be asking for some favours on that. But it's been good having you on, Geezer. And
good fun.
Hopefully, maybe once everything starts to lift a bit, and maybe once the internet starts working the way it should do, I can hopefully get my streams running back to full capacity again. The first couple were absolutely fine. So
looking forward to the COVID thing ending, because I'm looking forward to Vinny's shoot 'em up evening.
Oh yeah, Vinny's been he's been acquiring TVs and everything. Vinny has, he borrowed a load off me right before Revival, and then we had them back, and he said, I'm buying up loads myself now, mate. He said he was hosting gaming parties as well. How come we've never had an invite then? So maybe that's what's
I think we get an invite by default, but I cannot wait till that, because he's got the first one is going to be a shoot 'em up themed one, which of course is right up my street. So.
He loves it. A couple of years ago, Vinny actually did. I had him host the shoot 'em up section. We split the areas by genre rather than by anything else, and he did an entire area which was all shooters, and that was really cool. So it's right up Vinny's street. It's kind of games he loves, and I know you love that kind of stuff. So you're birds of a feather, so to speak. But guys, sorry about the breakup, sorry about the interruptions, but I hope you've enjoyed what you've listened to, and I'll splice this back together. And if you want to watch it back in a more absorbable chunk, I would say check back on YouTube in a few days, and we'll see if we can get something stitched back together from this. I may postpone Thursday's stream. I might have to do a few test streams before then just to see exactly what the problem is. I might have to get onto my ISP, to be honest, and see what's happening, but I don't like these interruptions. They break up my flow too much. So but thanks for sticking with me anyway, and thanks for watching this series so far. Everyone's been really enjoying it, and that's why I don't let it slip now. If I have to go back to streaming to one platform, then that's what I might have to do for now. But for now, guys, enjoy the rest of your evening. Thanks for tuning in. Take it easy. And
Take care,
thanks,
everyone.
Barry,
Stay
for
safe.
joining.